Good morning. This is your host, Josh. Be sure to follow us and share this podcast with everyone you know. In this episode, we'll be chatting with Amy, the founder of Homesteaders of America. She sits down with us and shares her life, her conference, and her upcoming plans. You can check us out on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Radio Public, and Breaker. To all the listeners and new followers, we'd like to thank you for tuning in with us, and hopefully y'all enjoy. Good morning. How are you?
Awesome. I'm good. How are you?
Doing great.
Good.
Well, so I'd like to introduce Amy Fewell. And
Yes.
She is the founder of Homesteaders of America, and we are super excited to have her on.
Well, I'm really excited to be here.
Do you mind sharing a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Amy Fewell. I am a homesteader here in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains in Virginia. As you said, I'm the founder of Homesteaders of America, which is an annual conference that we host here in Virginia, which brings together a lot of homesteaders from all over the country and even beyond. Last year, we had people from Australia and England, and so it's a pretty spectacular event. We had about 3,500 people last year, and that was just our third year.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty great. The first year we had it, we were only expecting 300 and we had 1,500.
Oh my.
Yeah. So we were like grossly underprepared. And then, last year we were expecting like 2,500, and we had 3,500 and we could have even had more. We kind of lost count a little bit. So it's been growing every year. And then also, besides Homesteaders of America, I'm a writer. So I've authored 2 books. One is called The Homesteader's Herbal Companion, which was my first book, and then The Homesteader's Natural Chicken Keeping Handbook. So those were fun projects to work on. And then I also write articles for magazines like Backyard Poultry and various different online publications. So I'm pretty well into the homesteading community, you could say.
Well, that's awesome. And that's a good thing, definitely, because it's important to be involved in the community, but also have a really good understanding of, what the needs are of
Right.
the homesteaders. And what better way to do that than to hold a conference every single year. So I definitely like the Natural Chicken Keeping Handbook. I think that's an awesome book, especially because I believe Joel Salatin helped you.
He did. Yeah. So Joel actually wrote the foreword to both of my books.
That's awesome.
Which was pretty great. Obviously I've gotten to know Joel through the Homesteaders of America conference. He's one of our keynote speakers every year. And it's a funny story because, when I first asked Joel, so I founded Homesteaders of America in 2016. We didn't have our first conference until 2017. So it took me about a year to plan the first conference, and I had zero monies. And I remember I knew I wanted to get Joel. I didn't know who else I was going to get, but I had to get Joel. And so I emailed him and I told him, I was like, listen, you don't know me from Adam. And I'm just this girl trying to start this homesteading conference because there were all these conferences that I could never go to because I don't really travel a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And there was just a need, especially here on the East Coast for a conference like that. And so I told him, I said, I don't even know if I can pay you. Like, I just tell me how much I would owe you if I could pay you. And then I will make it happen somehow, even if I have to, scrounge up some of my own pennies. And I remember he emailed me back and he said, I like your gumption. He's like, you know what? I don't even care. He's like, I'm going to come just because I think this is great. And I want to see how it plays out. And, so he's been with us since the first year, and I think he brought like 3 cases of books or something, and he sold out of all of them, every single book in one day. And
well, of course, I mean, it's Joel, and
yeah. Well, but he was shocked. He was like, I don't even do this at other places. This is crazy.
That's so awesome, though. That definitely tells you that whenever people gather at the conference, they're there for one purpose. They're there to learn, to help each other, and I think that's really cool because it allows the individuals who are at the conference the ability to network with people.
Right.
Yeah. I would love to be in an environment that you're sharing the same passion with another homesteader or with another person that just said, you know what, I just want to come just because. And they're interested. So this is something that they want to do for the rest of their lives. And it's really exciting. That's awesome though, that you had Joel come in and he just he just said, okay, sure, I'll join in and see how everything goes.
Yeah, he's pretty spectacular like that. I would say he's probably one of our biggest cheerleaders. And and Joel and I talk, randomly through email about various different things that have nothing to do with conference, but he's just a great, he's a really down to earth person. And it's so funny because I think everybody thinks he's like this celebrity that you have to not really talk to, you just kind of see him, right? And he's just the complete opposite. Like, he loves talking to everybody and being involved in the community, and at conference he just walks around and he talks to people, and it's just really great. It's the conference is great. We have a lot of people who call it their once a year big family reunion, and because they all feel like they're coming together with people that are like-minded, and meeting new people, making new relationships, and even building old relationships, which is cool.
Was there anything in the past that you had that drew you to homesteading and to creating a huge gathering of people that are homesteaders?
Yeah, so my story is pretty interesting. I grew up around farming, but I didn't grow up on a farm. My grandparents were farmers, in the sense that they had a large piece of land and they had cows. That was about it. And they had a garden. They didn't have chickens or a milk cow or anything like that. I mean, obviously in their past they did. Farming never really piqued my interest until I got married. I was young. I was 18 when I got married, and a couple years later, we had our first son. And when he was a year old, he was diagnosed with childhood asthma, which we knew could be a possibility because my husband had childhood asthma. And so, I had this little 1-year-old baby who was suddenly put on all of these medications, all of these inhalers. I mean, I think at one point he had with 6 different inhalers and medications they were trying to put him on.
Oh, wow.
And I just didn't like that. Something inside of me there had to be a better way. And that's what I kept saying. There has to be a better way. What did people do decades and centuries ago?
Mm-hmm.
And so, as I got into researching asthma, we started living more naturally. We started using herbs and essential oils. I discovered that raw milk can help with asthma. I discovered that asthma can actually be a gut issue. Your lungs are one of the ways that your body releases toxins. And so a lot of people can have asthma because they don't have a healthy gut. So, and raw milk helps with mucous membranes to help regenerate lung lining. And long story short, we got into herbalism and natural living, raw milk, buying a raw milk share. And then eventually that turned into, hey, let's get some chickens. Yeah. And so that was, I think my son was probably 3 or 4 when we really started into the livestock journey and the gardening journey on our own. And this is I feel like this is how it goes naturally. People will start buying organically, going into CSAs or even just frequenting their local farmer. And then eventually they're like, hey, you know what? I can do this myself. And so that was kind of how that happened for us. And
also too, it's not cheap. I mean, even aside from the physical trauma, that you as a parent are seeing your kid have to go through, take something natural.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, the other thing is we used far less, even with the natural stuff, than we did with the chemical stuff. So, I mean, natural living in and of itself, unless you are growing it your own, it can be expensive too, but you get more for your money. In other words, because there was a lot of the herbs and essential oils that we could use for 10 million other things too.
Yeah.
So, and that kind of led us into naturally using herbs for our livestock. So we got chickens, and then we got ducks and quail and rabbits. We actually only currently live on a half acre. And everybody gasps when I say that. They're like, no way. And
we're expecting you to live on 1,000 acres.
That's right.
Nothing but farmland with just the Garden of Eden everywhere.
That's right. It's so funny every time I tell. It used to bother me actually when I would tell people, especially being the founder of HOA, they'd be like, what? And I felt kind of guilty that I didn't live on more land. And then I was like, why? Why would I feel guilty? We have done so much on this half acre. It has, I'm actually, we do have land now. We bought land this past year or this year. And, we're building a new homestead. We're building a house. We're building everything from scratch. But I am really going to miss this small homestead because it has been such a great experiment for us to,
It's a great stepping stone.
It is. And I tell people so often, don't knock the quarter acre, half acre, 1 acre homestead because you're probably going to learn more there than anywhere because you have to fit so much in such a small place and you have to make sure you're doing it humanely. You can't cram 5 milk cows on an acre, so it's really been a fun experience. We've had a pretty long journey, and now this year we are stepping into a much bigger, homesteading life. Now, we only have 5 acres that we bought, but honest to goodness, 5 acres is enough for us. We are finding, I mean, that's not to say in 10, 20 years, we might not be like, hey, we need more, and find something else, but we're treating it as our forever homestead for now, because I can fit a milk cow on it if I wanted to, and some chickens and whatever else. I could really do anything I wanted to there. But the challenge is it's wide open pasture land, and it does have a creek running through it. And as you might know, pasture that's been pasture for the last 50 years or more with cows running on it, it has such a deep root system.
Yes, it does.
And it is really hard to garden on. You have to really till up and work the land to get it workable. And so that's a new experience for us that we're going through. So it's fun, but I do miss my little tiny garden that was out front.
Oh, yes, I'm sure you do. Yeah. Would you say that your book, The Homesteader's Herbal Companion, would you say that that's what really inspired you was your son's asthma? And then it kind of led into learning about herbs and growing them and using them. Would you say that kind of transitioned you to becoming an author?
It did. Yeah. Well, I mean, I wrote before writing that book. I was a blogger for years and years and years. And I loved writing, but getting into herbalism and seeing how it works in my son's life and just our lives in general, inspired us to homestead, and it inspired me to write the book because there were so many people, that knew nothing. A lot of people think, well, herbalism, you can't do that because you don't know anything about it, right? A doctor has to do that. And that's just not true. I mean, we preach taking back our food system all the time, especially in homesteading. And then I'm like, I want to preach taking back my health system. I want to, and food goes along with that too. But, there are things that you can do. You can grow your own medicinal herbs, and it can be a little daunting and a little scary to think about. I had those thoughts. Oh my gosh, I'm going to kill my family because I'm going to give them the wrong thing, or I'm going to give them too much. And so I wanted to write the herb book to kind of take some of the fear out of that. And just the lessons I learned and the things that I learned and experienced, and share that with everybody else.
Well, that's great. It's important to share your experience of your mistakes and your success with someone, because if they're going down that same path, the last thing that they want to do is just constantly make mistakes and become discouraged.
Right. Absolutely. And, and we're always going to make mistakes either way.
Of course.
But it's for me, I love learning from other people. And I always say, one of the things that I say for the Homesteaders of America conference is, when I'm encouraging people to come, I say, we can't wait to learn with you, because it's homesteading and herbalism and everything. It's just a constant journey of learning. Like, there is no trophy at the end. There is no end. No. It's a constant process of learning. And I think when we can embrace that, we give ourselves a little more grace, that we don't have to get everything perfect. And so I love gleaning information from other people. And one of the things that I found, especially with writing, is I couldn't find a book that had all the things in it. Like, I wanted an herb book that had, from family to barnyard, and I couldn't find that. And so one of my favorite quotes is, if you can't find the book that you want, write it. And that's exactly what I did.
That's awesome.
We really enjoy hosting people at the event who, not only have information to share, but they have the experience to back it up. Our social media has grown like crazy, especially this year. We have a lot of people this year that are just starting to dip their toes into the homesteading world. We started a how to grow your own food series on YouTube earlier this year, and we got over 10,000 new subscribers in one weekend. And
That is incredible.
yeah, it kind of is mind blowing that we had that happen. And social media has pushed us because, while we're on the East Coast, I think we're unique because we have people come from all over the world. And the only
Hmm.
way they know about us is through social media. And so it has been one of our greatest tools. And, social media can be used as a blessing and a curse. And it has so far been pretty much a blessing to us and for us because we're able to connect with so many people and watch them grow in their homesteading journey while offering a service and an event for them to attend.
Exactly. What would you say the turning point was whenever you hope and pray that it's a good turnout, and then it ended up being, that insane turnout that you had mentioned earlier? When was that, and what went through your mind, and kind of just what did you feel?
Yeah. Well, there's probably a couple of those. So the first year, everyone told me you're not going to have more than 300 people show up. And if you have 300 people show up, that's still good, for a first year event. And when 1,500 people showed up, it was like, oh, okay. But for some reason, it still didn't click to me the first year. What actually clicked with me the first year was I remember finishing up an announcement about midday, and there was a man sitting in the front row after everyone had left the pavilion, and he was sitting there with his young daughter on his lap, and she was asleep. And as I walked past him, he said, I just wanted to say thank you. And I said, thank you for what? And he says, for putting this on. He started crying. And I'm like, oh no, because when people start crying, I start crying. And he expressed to me, they lived in a different state, and he expressed to me that, for like 12 or 13 years, they've been homesteading. And everyone thought they were weird. Their family thought they were weird. Their friends thought they were weird. They had lost connections because they didn't live the same life anymore. They adopted a lot of kids out of the foster system. So they had like 8 kids.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, and everybody thought, oh, that's weird, and people just left them. Like, just their life wasn't normal. They didn't look normal, and it wasn't for their family and friends anymore. And he told me, he said, my wife and I, and they brought all their kids. He said, we walked in this morning and we saw all the kids here and all the families, and we instantly connected with people. And he said, my wife turned to me, and for the very first time in the last 12 years, she said, I feel like I belong somewhere. Like,
That's awesome.
yeah, she said, I finally feel like we found our people, and so that is always going to be a major point for me. But I would say last year was probably the point which it really hit me. Last year we had our second child, which was a surprise baby because we were just not able to get pregnant for 10 years. And so he's been such a blessing. But I was like, how am I going to run conference with a 3-month-old? And he did great, but it was that morning I was holding him, and it was really quiet before conference started. And normally people don't start rolling in until around 7:30 because conference doesn't start till 8. And it was actually a little before 7. And we have walkie-talkie systems. And the parking area, I can't really see from where I am at the big barn where the speakers are. And all of a sudden, my husband comes on the phone. He said, babe, you have to come see this. He said, I have literally never seen so many cars in my entire life.
That's
And
awesome.
there were cars wrapped around the fairground, wrapped out to the highway, wrapped down the highway, down to the road, down to the restaurants. I mean, people were literally just like consuming the whole area. And I just stood there in awe. Like, all of these people were flooding this fairground all at one time to get there. And he goes, these are the only group of people I know who actually want to get somewhere like an hour early. I mean, we sold out of apparel if we tried to hold some back for the second day, but it didn't work. I mean, we sold out of all of our apparel in like the first 2 hours of conference, and it's a
That's
2-day
amazing.
conference. We were like, what are we going to
That's
do? So, the last
that's
year,
exciting though, because I definitely think that whenever you get into something, as big as this conference that you have, is that you are impacting enough people that they're wanting to come back and they're telling their friends about it,
exactly.
and if you can impact one family in your life, then you've done something
Yep.
right, and you have impacted thousands of families.
Yeah, and that's something that I've told my husband too. You know, we've had conversations about it, and a lot of people don't realize, a conference like this, I mean, it costs over $100,000 to run an event like this. And so it's not really a moneymaker when in the long run,
Yeah.
it's really not. And I told my husband last year, I said, honestly, I don't even care. As long as I'm not in debt, which I'm not, thank the Lord.
Yeah.
But I don't really even care because for me, it's just not about that. It's about providing something like that the man said on the first year. I mean, that changed my entire perspective on the event. If I can make people feel comfortable and feel like they belong somewhere and feel like they can learn and grow in this safe environment. We have people, of every race, every religion, every political background. And it's just peaceful. Like they're not arguing about their politics or their religious beliefs. Everyone is just there for homesteading. And I think that really is a great way to build community in general. When we all have this mindset that we're all in it together, it doesn't matter about
Mm-hmm.
anything else. That truly has been inspiring for a lot of people that attend the event. And they still feel at home, even knowing, it's no secret that I'm a Christian. I mean, I've been very vocal about that on my
Mm-hmm.
platform my entire life. And I've never ever had, anyone of different beliefs say that offends me or I feel like I'm in an unsafe place because of that. And we don't
Really?
do that. And we literally were talking about homesteading and we are trying to include everybody. And I think that's one of the greatest things about our conference is it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, what you believe, you're going to fit in.
With you starting up and this organization that you have now, and your books and all of these different outlets that you have going on in your life, what mistakes did you make in the beginning that you feel that you could help share with the listeners or with just anyone in general?
So with homesteading in general, and then I'll go into like the books and all that. With homesteading in general, I think one of my biggest mistakes was not doing enough research before jumping into a lot of this stuff. At the same time, you can't Google experience. So, embracing the experience as you go is really important. But I think for me, I jumped into chickens. I literally didn't even have a chicken coop. I had 2 chickens, didn't even have a chicken coop, and had to build the chicken coop that weekend when we got them. Don't do that. Don't be me. So things like that, researching and not, you don't have to do all the things. I say that to people a lot. Like people want to get into homesteading and think they have to have dairy, meat, vegetables, and even grow their own wheat, and it's not, you literally, that would have to be your full-time job. But I think a lot of people don't understand that even in the 1800s, people didn't do it all. They helped other farmers. They bartered, different things like that. So in the beginning, I thought I had to do it all, and it was frustrating for me that I couldn't do it all. And then embracing what I could do actually helped us out a lot and helped us grow community actually here locally. As far as like everything else, all of the things combined, um, I it I found that hiring someone to help me, and when I say hiring, I mean like it could even be just bartering for goods.
That's the beauty of
Right.
farm life. Bartering system is very
Yeah.
strong.
So not necessarily helping me on the homestead unless it's like babysitting or something, but helping me with my workload. Because in the beginning, again, I tried to do it all. I tried to write the book and do the social media and run HOA and run a household at the same time. And eventually it's just not going to work. And so I actually found that, hiring someone to help me in the long run, even though I had money or bartering going out, I actually had more money coming in because we were more productive together. So that's a big thing, especially for, parents that are working, trying to build up a work from home job and homestead. I know that's a lot of people's goals, is to be at home. And why not? If you're a homesteader, you want to be at home, right? Don't be afraid to hire a helper, even if it's just for a couple of hours a week, or somebody that does your social media or whatever. I felt like I had to be a martyr in every situation, and it ended up hurting me in the long run. And so I really can't stress that enough to people.
You don't have to do everything like you said. You don't have to jump in feet first and have a dairy farm and have a garden, and have an orchard and have pasture land and have all of this stuff that you have to maintain and you have to keep up. Finding a specialty, even if it is something like chickens, and honing in on that specialty, learning it really well, and still maintain my full-time job if I need to. You really should focus on that and specialize in something, learn it, really learn it, gain as much knowledge as you can.
I 100% agree with that. I mean, I was on a podcast a few weeks ago, and she asked me if I sew, and I laughed. I was like, no, I mean, I know how to sew. I could sew, I used to think I enjoyed sewing, but I don't. So I don't do that. And, there are things that's exactly right. There are things that you can be good at and you can do really, really well. But then there are things that somebody else can do better than you. It's better for you to be really good at the one or two things that you can handle and do well, and then let somebody else, do it, barter for something, or use your community for, if you can't grow meat, that's okay. Somebody else down the road probably is doing that and specializing in that. And so I think that's a really important thing for people to embrace and understand, because that was the biggest mistake for me was, and along with that comes bitterness and frustration when you want to do, when you want to do all the things and you try to do all the things, not only is it impossible, it's also very stressful, and it takes the beauty out of homesteading for a lot of people.
What learning tools or educational resources did you find, or did someone give to you along the way?
Yeah. So, some of the most valuable information you can get is for the people that are doing it. So I reached out to people that I was inspired by, whether they were local or, far away, and asked them questions, asked them the hard questions. I mean, the worst they can say is, no, I don't want to answer you, or just not answer you, that was one of the first things. And then I find a lot of value. So especially with herbalism for me, I found a lot of value in taking courses, and a lot of courses can be taken online now. In regard to homesteading, a lot of courses can be taken through your local extension office or your local community center. And so those were valuable for me. But otherwise, YouTube is a great free way to get information. But a lot of reading. I don't take this the wrong way, but anybody can have a YouTube channel. Anybody can have a blog post. Anybody can have social media. And most people are, they put out really good information, but there's a lot of bad information out there too. Yes. I have actually found that I can get more reliable, honest, good information by investing in a homesteading library, buying books that, these authors specialize in what they're writing about. And so obviously, books from Joel Salatin, Elliot Coleman, people like that who've been homesteading or gardening or raising livestock for years. And then likewise, there are also small authors, small publishing authors that have great information too. So I would say a lot of my money and resources has been put into books. And I know a lot of people don't have time to read, but I would really encourage people to make the time. My biggest thing is you do what you prioritize. And we all have the same 24 hours in a day. We just use it differently. So, if there's a topic that you really want to learn about, say it's, salad bar beef from Joel Salatin, you take time, invest your time into reading a book like that. Some of my favorite books are herb books, obviously, because herbalism is one of my first passions. I really enjoyed the Herbal Medicine Maker's Handbook. That literally is like a course within a book. And I've scratched it all to pieces with notes and things like that. Also, I would encourage people to read and watch things that they might not necessarily agree with. Because maybe somebody raises cows this way, but the other person raises cows that way. Every single person, every farmer, every homestead is going to have differences. You have difference in land, you have difference in methods, and you have to find the right one that's good for you. So, reading a lot of books, a lot of Jill Salatin, a lot of herbal books. There's, Story Publishing has a good amount of homesteading books that you can check out. They're probably one of the, biggest leaders in homesteading books. And then there's other publishing companies like Page Street, that, just go to your local Tractor Supply and browse the books there. And normally you're going to find something.
Now, how have you seen, because I know that in homesteading, the best ability is flexibility is the best ability, and you have to constantly be adapting to change and to new things with all of the COVID-19 stuff that's going on. How have you adapted to
Yeah, so it's been really interesting year. We've kind of halted ticket sales because we don't really know what we're doing. Obviously, every state is left up to the governor, and our governor is pretty adamant about not opening yet, not at least fully. And so we're waiting to make a final decision on what we're going to do by like the first week of September. But we are still planning it. We're just not pushing it very hard. But our goal is, if we have to cancel the in-person event, then we're going to try to take it virtually. And so people can still get all of the information that they want. It'll just be online. And we have a lot of people that are excited about that either way, because a lot of people can't come to conference because it's too far for them or they don't travel. And so they can see it online this year. And actually, people can see it online every year. It's just normally not up until like the end of November. And they can do that by getting a membership online. So we're adapting by in that way, actually having it virtually the weekend that the conference is supposed to happen. The goal is to do like a live stream with Joel and we have Rory Feet coming. He would do a live stream from his farm, different things like that with technology. If we were to have the event, we would have to adapt in a different way, I'm sure. Like I've already ordered extra hand washing stations, extra hand sanitizer. We don't really know, what the mask thing's going to be, whether we have to wear masks or not. So it's really hard to navigate. I'll be honest with you, as an event organizer, there's not a lot of information that they're providing us with because I think they don't even know, what's going to happen. We're actually expecting a larger audience either way, even if we have it in person. I mean, with how much homesteading has grown this year because of the virus, this job has turned into like a 40-hour-a-week job, answering emails or, just working on various different things. And people are really encouraged. They really want to come. A lot of people are optimistic that we'll still be able to have it. as time goes on, I become more and more optimistic about it. Like this morning, I read that Disney World's opening this weekend or something like that. But we're just going to have to wait it out and see. I mean, the other thing is, like, a lot of people talk about a second wave going through. And
The
so, well, what
wintertime.
if they decide to shut it down again the first week in October? You know what I mean? Like in our conferences, the second,
Yeah, no
so
kidding.
there's just stuff we have to think about that we normally wouldn't. I mean, and it's like we go through our contracts and we're like, there's nothing about a pandemic in here. Like, what are we going to get our money back? What are we supposed to do if we don't have conference? So it has been a true learning, nerve-wracking experience, but honestly, the encouragement from people and the desire from people to come or just learn in general, has pushed me personally to do better, to do more for people, to offer more for people. And so I think that has been a real encouragement for my entire team because of our homesteading lifestyle and just the way that we live in general. We don't have to go to the grocery store every week. We don't have to run errands every week. I'm actually home a lot. I mean, I am here a lot. And my husband, he owns his own business as well. And so he does, farm estate maintenance. He's an electrician. He does HVAC work. So he's a tradesman. And so we're seeing a lot of trades haven't really been affected very much during this because, somebody needs their AC worked on or somebody's got a plug at home that needs fixing. In fact, we probably have seen him get more work because people are home and trying to get projects done. There are
Exactly.
times, so we have gone through times where we have been home together, not during the quarantine, because he works outside a lot. If it's raining, he doesn't really work. And so, we've had weeks of rain before, sometimes 2 weeks at a time where he's been off work. And yeah, it can get a little nerve wracking. You're like, please, dear Lord, just go back to work, find something to do. For that, honestly, I would say it's a lot like homeschooling. I know that doesn't make any sense, but during that time, all the rules have to go out the window. But you also have to set new boundaries with your family because like your family knows your boundaries and your time constraints on a regular everyday basis. But when they're actually home with you, if they're not used to being home or if none of you are used to being home, it's just brand new territory.
Maverick Homestead Media would like to give a huge shout out to our sponsor, Anchor, for the creation of this podcast. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's truly the easiest way to make a podcast literally anywhere. The best part is it's completely free. There are so many creation tools to customize your very own podcast. If you are someone who has a voice that wants to be heard, share experiences, or just talk to your listeners about, well, really anything, Anchor is the place for you. Not only are they completely free, they will distribute your podcast to Spotify, Apple Podcast, and so many more. Another great opportunity with this podcast is that you can make money quickly with minimum listenership. All your podcasting desires wrapped up in one place. Be sure to download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm. That's anchor.fm to get started. Are you ready? We are. We're going live on your very first podcast in 3, 2, 1.
Give your kids a small space in the garden for them to garden. Wear them out because they'll be tired. They will take naps and they will go to bed early. And just learning that it's okay to everything perfect during this time. I think a lot of people stress out because their regular schedule is kind of not the same, and that's really understandable. But it's a really great opportunity to start new projects and do things that you haven't had time to do and enjoy your family while you're doing it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. I think that it's good to, like you said, to know what they're having to do, to know what their boundaries are, but also to kind of integrate your life into theirs and learn how to adapt with each other. I think
Right.
that a lot of families nowadays are learning how to adapt with each other and how to really work together as a family, truly work together as a family. I know that gets pushed all over all over the news and all over TV, let's be together as a family, but now you're really having to be together as a family.
Right.
So it's it's exciting, and it's also it can be kind of nerve-wracking too, because that may be the last place that you want to be. But for a lot of people, especially in the homesteading industry, that's something that hasn't really changed for them. They're so
Right.
used to working together as a family, building their homestead, that they said, okay, well, everybody has to stay home. You're like, okay, well, that's my job, so I'm good here.
Yeah.
I'm happy here.
Yeah. And people who do work together, even if they're not home all the time, like my husband and I work together a lot, on homesteading things. But because we've done that, I know his boundaries. I know when to step away or when to not say, "Hey, I don't think I do it that way." Those are things I know. And so it's just getting to know people, your family in a different way. Maybe not in a different way, but just understanding them more. And that can be stressful, but I think it's really important in the long run, because as you get to know them more just in life in general, it teaches you more about yourself too.
It really does. Now, with your home, do you see any new and exciting structures or anything in the future that you're going to be building? Or I know that you
Oh
had
my
mentioned that
goodness.
you're going to be getting your new 5 acres, and that's an exciting thing to experience. So,
Right.
what do you have in the future that's coming up in the pipeline?
Yeah, so we recently added some pasture ranging systems that we bartered for. Those have been awesome. We have 50 meat birds out there right now, and that's a new experience for us because we've never raised that many at one time. Um, we do have a lot of new things that are going to happen over the next year or two. I was actually just talking to someone this morning, and we're hoping to get our well dug for the house in the next couple of weeks. So that'll be a game changer. It
Yes,
actually
it will.
feels kind of real. Because right now there's no running water on our new homestead, and yet we have a huge garden over there. And so the nice thing is that we have a creek on the property, and we actually put the garden close to the creek, not like right on top of it, but nearby where we can put a pump in the creek and still water the garden. Um, but ultimately, we do have a lot of projects that, I mean, literally everything's from scratch. There are no outbuildings on the property. So, I don't know. I think eventually we're going to try to get a big shop built, maybe a metal type building structure or a pole barn structure as a
Yeah, like a
shop.
barn dominium type of.
Yeah, yeah. And then, we're going to try to make that as functional for our entire homestead as possible, so that while it is 5 acres, you can only fit so many structures on 5 acres. And so it'll be a shop, it'll be, it'll have a lean-to on it for feed and hay and things like that. It'll have certain bays on it. We pay monthly for storage for the Homesteaders of America conference. So I want to kind of bring that all to me, so that it's just easier to store. So that'll be a big project for us too. And then we would like to kind of put maybe a couple of run-in sheds on the property. The property is actually cut in half by the creek. And so we'd like to put maybe, or at least I would, maybe my husband doesn't know this yet. I would like to put a run-in type shed, maybe even portable, on one side and then another one on the other side. Um, because we're really planning on doing a lot of rotational grazing. And I also plan on talking him into a milk cow, which he doesn't know yet.
That's
But
awesome. Well, we'll tell him
but
not to listen to the podcast until after you have a chat with him, of
I
course.
know, right? I know this is how our life goes. So he's not even gonna be, surprised. But so there's structures like that, and then there's other structures which are kind of interesting. You don't hear people talk about this. Like, we need to make little bridges over the creek to get from one side of the property to the other. Um, and we've also put up electric fencing around our garden because it is in the middle of a wide open pasture. All the deer and the turkeys and the rabbits are just going to go to town on that thing. So So we have a lot of projects like that, and I'm sure that that'll grow and expand as we get there and know what our needs are. But for now, that's what's planned.
That's exciting. That's really
Yeah.
awesome. I definitely wish that I had a running creek. I mean, we have a pond, about a half acre pond on our property, but it fluctuates and during the summertime and in the springtime, it'll fill up all the way and then I have to create a runoff or a spillway. And so I can understand that, having water on your property is crucial. I can only
Yeah.
imagine having water on your property for a garden. Well, is there anything else that you want to share with our listeners or with anyone that could potentially stumble on this podcast and it could be helpful information for them?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing a lot of people ask me is how do you get started? Where do you begin? And honestly, I know this kind of contradicts what I said earlier about jumping all in, but sometimes you just got to jump all in. It doesn't mean you got to get all of the animals and everything, but um, you know, just just be encouraged to start where you are. You don't have to have 100 acres. You don't even have to have an acre. You start where you are with what you have, whether it's in an apartment or on a ranch. There's always something each one of us can do to really grow our homesteading lifestyle. And whether that looks like just buying organically or from your local farmer or growing it all yourself. I think that if we embrace where we are, and that's when we grow the most.
I couldn't agree with you more. Jumping all in is extremely important. You kind of have to, and especially in homesteading, it doesn't mean that, as you said, jump in where you just acquire everything,
Right.
but jump in where you find that specialty, you find that thing that you really love, or you may end up loving, and you work on that and you build that and you gain knowledge on that one area, and you become a true steward of your land. That's the biggest takeaway for me in being a homesteader is you are truly being a steward of your land. You're giving
Right.
back. You're giving back yourself to the land and you're working hard for your land because it's not going to just it's not one of those things that you're going to reap the benefits. Your family will reap the benefits. Your community will reap the benefits. And it's exciting. It can be very exciting for someone. And I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast and thank you so much for your time. And I wish you nothing but the very best. And hopefully this conference is all good to go. And in October, we can all go to the Homesteaders of America conference. That would be phenomenal.
That would. Well, thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed it, and I think you're doing great things. So keep up the good work.
To all the listeners and new followers, we'd like to thank you for tuning in with us. And hopefully y'all enjoyed this show as much as we did. Be sure to follow us and share this podcast with everyone you know. We're just getting started. You can check us out on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Radio Public, and Breaker. Now go out, be the change, be a trendsetter, be a maverick. Ready, set, farm.